Right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another version of our Thursday online call. Sorrel, unfortunately, is unable to attend, so I'm just doing it on his behalf. My name is Vaughan Henkel, and we are from the Security Solutions team. So I'm going to hand over to Pierre, who's the analyst on Renergen. It's an interesting business, so I look forward to Pierre's review of it. Thanks, Pierre.
Thanks, Vaughan. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I think it's definitely an interesting company where still a lot of things to, happen and excitement around it. If we start with the just overall view of the company, so we'll look in at the financial results in the next slide. But this is a company with a possible large amount of growth ahead. Management guided EBITDA of between 5.7 and 6.2 billion. Apologies. So that's quite a lot of growth in the future. Taking into account this company has a market cap of about 2.8 billion. It's up about the last couple of days, so let's say 3 billion. So that's quite a significant amount. You can also see the two phases that they have. So the phase one of the Virginia gas project was their pilot one, so more of a testing type of phase, where the actual phase two, they're estimated to be about 12 times as large. So we currently have a sell recommendation on the share, and even though they have all these growth prospects, we just think there's quite a lot of risks at the moment. So it would have the normal risks of commodity and currency prices, but then specifically, a lot of the future of this company depends on its funding and also on the delivering on the operational success. So also taking into account that they project this EBITDA to be around the financial year 2027. So it's quite a long timeline. And if you take the discount time value of money also into account. And it's also just worth highlighting that the auditors also did raise a going concern key matter, which I don't think should go necessarily unnoticed. So going to the next slide and looking at the financial results then. So I think there's three things that I would mainly want to highlight here. The first of all, just touching again on the growth. So you can see revenue up almost 4 times. They turned into a gross profit in this year. So that we expect to continue. It will be up again a lot in the next years and going forward. But then second, I just want to highlight again, not ignoring the risks of going concern. They are in a loss-making position overall, and it all depends on the funding and the delivering on the second phase operationally for this company. And then third, and lastly on this, I just want to point out that this income statement will quite change a lot over these years as the company grows into, let's say, more of what it wants to become. And not only will the revenue will grow, but there's quite a lot of expenses not necessarily captured in here. So we have interest expense of about 60 million and 120 million worth of forex losses, which they didn't expense on this income statement, but it goes into their property, plant and equipment as they, let's say, build up the projects. And the moment when the assets are ready for use, this won't be capitalized anymore, and it will go to the income statement. So then you would see them being exposed to these type of expenses they weren't exposed before. So yeah, just getting back to that point. So we expect the income statement to quite dramatically change in the next couple of years. Then looking on the next slide, so talking a bit more to the helium side of the business and operationally. So they have the land is just short of about 200,000 hectares, and they only about 14% allocated to reserve. So there's a 86% still a part of the contingent and prospective. So still a lot of possible reserves for in the future. And then if you also look on the graph at the right-hand side, you can see every time that they look at these reserves, how it increased. So comparing from March 2019 to September 2021, This is now the proven helium reserves. And then just to comment a bit on what the 1P, 2P, and a 3P is. So the 1P is what's proven, the 2P is the proven and probable, and the 3P is the proven, probable, and possible reserve. So it's just the likelihood of the reserves, but in all cases you can see it quite increasing there from years. And then another point, I think the thing that stands really out for Renergen, that it has high concentration rates of helium. So if we look at these other, let's say 9 countries in that yellow block there, and you look at those squares on the right-hand side, their concentration levels are about 0.4%, where Renergen's is 3.4%. So quite significantly higher concentration. And also in just talking about the selling of the liquid helium. So they, in the first phase, they contracted with Linde, the large gas company, to sell about 80% of the phase 1 helium. And then in the phase 2, they want to contract about half of it and be exposed the other half to the market prices. Then we can go to the next slide. Okay, and then on a price performance, so from about March last year, the share price has reached this peak and then continued downwards. This is quite a volatile stock. And then also just to note, I think the last 3 days or so, the share price has also been up a bit again, with them securing some of the debt funding that they wanted to obtain. And then on the next slide. So we have a intrinsic value of 10 Rand, so it's quite substantially below the share price. This is because we take into account all these risks. So we also have a bear base and a bull case that we assign to it. And as they achieve these certain milestones, such as the important, let's say, NASDAQ listing, where they get shares, and we see, what price they can get there, and also as they reach operational success close to the time, we'll probably assign a larger probability to the bull case, and go that way about it. Currently, it's just a long timeline that's ahead of us, with still some key milestones to be reached in our view. That brings me into my presentation. Thanks.
Thanks, Pierre. I just want to make 1 or 2 comments before I hand it open to questions. So clearly you can see the work that Pierre's done on this business. There looks like there's a real opportunity in terms of helium, in terms of liquid national gas. For us, the critical factors that drive into this valuation is the level of dilution. Here you've got a company which, and I know it's a little bit unfair, but let's just have a look at it. That's just reported revenues of 12 million Rand, and is basically forecasting to the market an EBITDA close to 6 billion in about 4 years' time. So the level of execution risk is massive, number 1. Number 2, the level of dilution is very difficult to calculate. They've got, off the top of my head, Pierre, it's about just over 100 million shares, 100 million-ish shares.
Yeah.
We work on in the region of about 400 million shares by the time they're actually operational in a couple of years' time with the EBITDA level. As you will have noticed on the front page today, they're talking about a $750 million financing opportunity. So here you've got a company, 12 million in revenue, that's coming for about 15 billion in debt. And obviously it isn't disclosed that we've seen, but the key issue is the NASDAQ listing. In order to list a whole bunch of shares, in order to have the cash flow to service the debt while you build this business up. So it's not to say it's an interesting opportunity. The problem is that the financing and the execution risk is really large from what we can see. With that, I'll throw it open to questions. If you could raise your hand and turn on your camera, that would help. And everyone else remain muted, or you can type in the chat and we're happy to take them. And I do see that there is a significant number of people. I think we've got 65. Oh, and yeah, we've got 72. So it's probably one of the more well attended of our presentations. So small company, but clearly it is a private clients company. Dick, if you want to ask a question.
Hi, good morning all. Yeah, I was just I guess a straightforward question. What is the time frame on the roadshow in the US, the listing on the NASDAQ? I've seen some rumors about that. No idea if that ball is already rolling or if they want to still do it in the future.
Yes, it's definitely rolling. So they're aiming for in the 24 financial year. So they're currently in the 24 financial year. So I expected during this year we should see the progress on that.
And I mean, listing in the US, getting access to the more sophisticated investors over there, would that not be usually beneficial for, you know, a niche helium miner, if you will? That not be
Well,
very beneficial?
let me start and I'll hand over to Pierre to add. You're absolutely right, because it's a very deep capital market. They are very sophisticated and would be able to determine a value. Obviously, the problem that you got is that they understand finance as well as we do, if not better. So they will be very, very key into calculating the same problems that we have or concerns we have in terms of dilution and in terms of debt. Now, the one thing that they do have in their favor is that they're getting finance from the DFIs. Now, DFIs tend to actually provide finance at very, very attractive rates. However, there will still be dollar rates, and obviously you then have a currency issue. Now, clearly you sell these things in dollars, but the operations are still sitting in South Africa with South African risk as well. So yes and no to your point, and that's obviously why they're going there.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Chris, go ahead.
As construction of the rollout of the project is concerned, because any delay on a project of this magnitude is going to increase cost dramatically.
So you're absolutely right, Chris. I'm going to again hand over to Pierre. The key issue is also, remember, the way finance works for all of us is that because this is a startup company with 12 million revenues now, we value it, or Pierre values it, our team values it, you know, in 2027. Pierre, 2027 is the
Well,
just under 5 billion.
2028,
Sorry?
because I'm just, yeah, I want to see the full ramp up of the company.
I beg your pardon. So PS 2028, so you're looking at just under 5 billion in 2028. Given the risk of the business, as you know, we discount back that 2028 valuation by 5 years at quite an onerous cost of capital, given the risks and given the beta that you approach. So the earlier they can execute, absolutely, the higher the value. To your point, the later they execute, obviously it has an impact. And just as a commentary, Sasol in South Africa, as we know, has been doing a lot of very large projects. If you look at the history of the last 25 odd years, they typically have come in around about 30% later and about 30 odd % more expensive. So any forecast, no matter how good you are, you've got to start taking into account those potential risks. We take the management guidance as it is, but the risk is very high. Sorry, any other questions?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Pierre, jump in. Yeah.
I think also we see management, they're also quite prudent. So with the phase one, there was that little delay in September, October, not a big deal, but we can see that just you know, as a bit of an indication. And then also, if there's any delays, what I also just want to add is, so they do have debt governance. So there's certain financial ratios that they have to maintain. And if there's any pressure placed on, you know, cash flows and things like that, it increases the risks of these debt governance and things like that as well.
I think Dion had a question. I don't see.
Yes. Morning.
Yeah, go ahead.
Morning, everybody. Yeah. My question is, if you take into consideration the current exchange rate and you're doing all your calculations in rands now for the build of the plant and everything and the loans, the amount of money capital that they need, what will the influence be when they list on in the US and the exchange rate changes by then? whenever they list there, and say the exchange rate drops down to 15 or to 14 or whatever, what will the influence of that be on the dilution of the number of shares? Thanks.
So the exchange rate, just to answer on the influence overall, it's definitely going to be quite significant. The debt that they're getting now is $750 million, so it's quite a large portion. But then also in our forecast, just to also point that out, so we didn't take a specific view in every year what we think the exchange rate. We applied an exchange rate of 20 rands to the dollar, and then yes, you are correct also with it will also impact what they get dollar wise, what the exchange rate would be at that point in time. But yes, it is a material consideration in this valuation.
Maybe just to add to something, there is a natural hedge to a certain extent because some of the capital equipment, a large chunk of the capital equipment is dollar based. So, swings and roundabouts.
Oh, okay. But the quicker they list, the better with the current exchange rate.
The quicker that absolutely you bring the money back, but there's always going to be some
Yeah.
costs in rands.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a question from Swedish here. Are you able to forecast into the future if all is successful for Renergen? What would the EPS be 4 years out? Maybe just talk about the management guidance that we're using, Pierre.
Yeah, so basically we try to forecast also the EBITDAs, seeing as this is also what management uses as a main guidance currently. So their guidance is 5.7 to 6.2 billion EBITDA. So that's I would view it as quite a positive or bullish type of view if you use that. We like to go more a bit on a prudent approach than just, let's say, fully trusting always management for what they guide.
Okay, question from Afele. Did the valuation take into account the LNG supply agreement with TimeLink?
So yes, it would have, not explicitly on its own as a forecast, but we kind of used management guidance and then worked from those assumptions, taking our own into account. So the overall LNG forecast, not the specific per, let's say, customer.
Perfect. And I think there's one other thing. Any plans on hedging the exchange rate risk?
No, not that I'm aware of at the moment. There's some benefits also as some of these gas prices are also exposed to dollars, so they benefiting in a way also if the rand deteriorates, and vice versa.
Fantastic. If you're not asking a question, if I can ask you to just mute yourself. I can't find who isn't. It's just we're getting some feedback on our side here. That seems to be it. I don't seem to see any more questions. Oh, one last one from Nzumdile. How does one invest in a company if it's not listed? It is listed. It's just listed in South Africa. They will be listing ADRs or secondary in NASDAQ. So that's obviously where they're looking to get a higher multiple because NASDAQ typically trades in a higher multiple than in South Africa, but it is listed here at the moment. Any last questions? Right, that's it. Thank you very much, Pierre. I beg your pardon. I nearly shot Shaun in the foot. Sorry, Shaun, if you want to talk about this. We've got our technical signals that Shaun's going to chat to you as well.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Yeah, just looking at the chart of Renergen. Yeah, obviously this was until last night's close. At this point in time, you can see it's trading way below its 200-day moving average and below that long-term resistance trend line. So yeah, the long-term trend is bearish. However, in the medium term, it has been moving sideways. It has broken up above the resistance trend line, or that support trend line, and it was there yesterday. I think last was trading at 22.20. So it's on its way up. You know, with the MACD indicator, the oscillator at the bottom there, you can see it was basically neutral to turning around. But other shorter term oscillators like stochastic and RSI have confirmed that it is overbought and has moved up. So it's on its way up towards the that resistance trend line, and I think that's the target price will be about 25.57 rand. So it's around about 15 to 20% upside potential still. Yeah, into that little zone there where that arrow is now. So that's where we're going to. But at this point in time, yeah, I would call it a speculative buy. Thanks, Vaughan.
Pleasure. Thanks, Shaun. So obviously there's our technical insight from Shaun, and that's probably playing towards the idea as you see the front page story about the Nasdaq listing and the DFI loan. So we on our side look at it from fundamentals, and although we acknowledge there's potential upside, as we say, we worry about the financing, we worry about the dilution. So that's our key area. Pierre, anything last thing you'd like to say?
No, not really specifically. No, I think it's an interesting company with just, I think you have to keep your eye out on these key dates going forward. And my main view, it's a bit early though. So let's see how it plays out. But definitely something interesting and some excitement lying ahead here in the market.
Fantastic. Thanks everyone for joining. It was great having you, and we'll see you next week with the next one. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.